How's it going, everybody? This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. Put your questions in the chat, your questions about politics in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a good answer to your questions. I know that politics can be really intimidating, I know it can be really confusing, and there's all this misinformation and propaganda that's just being tossed around willy nilly out there. And so it can be really difficult to figure out what's accurate information, even, and what is real, what is actually happening. There's something weird on in the culture, in the zeitgeist, where people are thinking weird things about what the government is doing or what the responsibility of its citizens are and what's legal and what's not legal. And so this is a place where you can come and ask all those questions, and hopefully, I know the answer to it, and I'll be able to give you a good response for it. But there's no such thing as a dumb question. Everybody is welcome. I don't care if you're a left person or a right person or a Democrat or a Republican or whatever. This is not a fighty channel. This is not a show for me to call people up and then yell at them for having different political beliefs than me. This is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. Because, sometimes you can't ask certain questions in person. Sometimes where you live, you can't ask certain questions because you're like, oh, if I ask this where I'm from, people will think I'm some sort of libtard cuck. Or if I ask this where I'm from, people will think I'm some sort of MAGA lunatic. And, there's no judgments here. You can ask me anything that you like. And there's no debating, there's no roasting, there's no yelling at each other. This is not a place for fights. I'm not going to get into it with people in the comments. I am just going to answer all good faith questions as good faith as I can possibly muster, as objectively and sincerely as I possibly can. I know politics. It can be really confusing if it's not something that you are used to engaging with. Like people just throw around these words like reconciliation and filibuster, and they threw out the abbreviations for these three-letter agencies, and we refer to people just by their last names or by their cabinet positions, and it's feel like you don't know what the Secretary of the Interior does, then that really doesn't mean anything to you to hear like that's the Secretary of the Interior that just said that. So this is the place where you can ask all those questions, free of any kind of judgments or roasting or debate. Freak765 says, "Bro, do you have a brother that goes to Ball State? LOL." I don't know what Ball State is. But yes, I do have a brother. He lives in Pennsylvania. He doesn't go to Ball State, though. I'm assuming that's some sort of a school. My brother is, I think, 50 now, something like that. So, yeah. All right, excellent first question, Freak765. Welcome to the live stream. Ask me anything about politics. You can ask me anything that you like. There's no judgments, there's no roasting, there's no debating. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat. If you're asking in good faith, then you will get a good faith response. So hit me up in the comments with any of your questions about politics, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. There's no such thing as a dumb question. There's also you don't have to worry about getting judged based on what your question is, because I will answer in good faith, regardless of if your question is a left-leaning question or a right-leaning question or whatever. What's FDT mean? Gomez Munster. Truth about A size. If it's been proven that all presidents are related, is democracy real? Yeah, I don't believe that presidents being related means that democracy is not real. Curtis Yarvin says thought. All right, thought. Dan Blackroy, great to see you again. National parks plus federal land shit equals Secretary of the Interior. Wow, you were watching way back then? That's pretty funny. Marie, good afternoon to you as well. All right, everybody. Excellent start to the live stream today. Brian says, let's see how much you know. Are there WMDs in Afghanistan? I don't believe there are, Brian. Also, let's not have this live stream be a testing me live stream. Like, I'm here to answer your questions if you have them. Like, let's not. This is not I'm not challenging you to stump me on, you know, on information about politics. All right. So, yeah, any questions about politics, just let me know. Put them in the chat. I am here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. I'm here to help people understand what's going on in government. I'm here to help people to be engaged with what's going on in government, and a resource towards finding out how they can get involved if they want to be more activist about it all. All right. Let's see here. Somebody with no name says, with the current administration, how likely is gay marriage going to be overturned? So I think that it's likely going to be sent back to the states, which means that's similar to abortion. It's going to be depending on what state you live in, whether or not your, whether or not your same-sex marriage will be respected by whatever state you're living in. Zambrio says thoughts on the USS Liberty. I don't remember what the Liberty is. Can you remind me what that story is? Curtis Yarvin says, "Who's your top political theorist?" I like Ben Rhodes. He's pretty smart. Yeah, I like Tommy Vitor. Yeah, Chris Hayes. I think it's cool. Truth About AI says 44 presidents related to King John responsible for the Magna Carta, wrongful taxation. I mean, you're talking about distant relatives, John Becker says, "Can you inform me where the tariff money is going?" It is going to the federal government, and the government is using that money for whatever the fuck they want to use it for. Scott Clower says, Sankit trying to pull us into a war. IA Nation. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know enough about that story, Zambrio and Scott, so sorry. Help Me Human says, politicians are the scumbags of society evil. Not all of them, Help Me Humans. And when you say that they all are, you are giving cover for the worst ones, because it makes it seem like, oh, they're all the same. Shaw the Pooper says, you ever hear about the Hannibal Directive? No, I have not. Julie says, so you don't know either? Don't know either about where the tariff money is going, Julie? It's going to the government. The government has it. They are spending it on the things that the government is spending it on. They are giving it to ICE. They're building detention centers. They're building battery centers for fucking AI farms and shit like that. Data farms. All right. Looks like a falling star emoji. How will the country react if the SCOTUS overturns gay marriage? Will the protests be bigger than Roe? I mean, that's not a prediction I feel comfortable making. It's like, people are upset about what's going on with the country, and they are protesting and organizing as much as they can, but people are kind of exhausted after the first Trump administration, so people are a little deflated. So I'm not really sure if we're going to see larger ones, but people will be pissed, people will be upset. All right. Robin Lynn says, hey Jarrett, how are you? Have not seen on. Well, I've been here, Robin. I'm here 5 days a week. Sir Knows, devoid of funk, says Department of American Treason. Which department are you referring to that as? Jason Beard says, is BRICS going to complete its goal? I think likely. I mean, Donald Trump is basically, he took America out of the fight against BRICS. So he has basically just surrendered us to BRICS. Marcia says, what are your thoughts on Mike Johnson's retractable, the FBI informant thingy? He's just so fucking stupid. He's obviously so fucking lying about this. And it's just part of the same stupid playbook of throwing as much shit against the wall as you can and seeing what sticks. There's no accountability for the things they've said in the past versus what's going forward. It's just so fucking stupid. Right. Curtis Yarvin says, what's your economic theory? I believe in a mixed model like they have in, nations like Sweden and Norway and Canada and shit like that. It's more of a Keynesian economist than a trickle down guy, of course. Marie says, do you think Musk will get involved in the midterms? He'll donate to Republicans probably. I don't think he's going to do his, what do you call it? His new political party. That's not going to happen. Sean the Pooper says the Hannibal Directive wasn't ordered by the Israeli government to kill their own people on October 7th. I don't know if that's a real thing, Shaw the Pooper, but I'll give it a Google. They're building a ballroom in the White House. Yeah, but I think that's all being done with donor money. As much as I would love to break them over the coals for that being a waste of taxpayer funds, I believe that is just bribes that are going to Trump by billionaires and CEOs and shit like that. Marie says, do you think the flotilla will succeed? I mean, it will most likely get stopped by Israel and then just sent back to somewhere else. Jason Beard says, you got what I said though, right? What did you say, Jason Beard? Then the dollar will be squashed. Yeah. The value of the dollar is already tanking. I do not see any light at the end of the tunnel where the value of the dollar starts to resurrect or even stop its downward decline. Bacchus says, why are all politicians Freemasons? All politicians are not Freemasons, Bacchus. Shaw the Pooper says, it's totally real. Yolan Galant, the Israeli defense minister, said it live on TV. Just Google it. I'll give it a Google, Sean. But you got to understand that where Israel is concerned, there is a ton of misinformation out there and conspiracy theories. So we have to be extremely careful about that. Baka says, how do you know? Because I know. I've done the research. Polly Potato says, should somebody do it or just wait till it happens naturally? I believe somebody should just wait. We should all just wait for it to happen naturally. Because maybe if it doesn't happen naturally, then when he's out of office, he can go to jail. That seems like a pretty good thing, you know? Baka's called me a liar, and that's an example of the kind of comment that gets you blocked. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually be part of the conversation. Ask a question. No screen name says, if the dollar is shrinking, what should the average American do? I mean, I am not qualified to give any kind of financial advice whatsoever, but I would just say everybody needs to have sort of a recession economy mindset of just like being very careful and saving and not spending frivolously. You know, it's it's a terrifying time to be an American. Let's see here. JCPR says thoughts on the guy with the island saying Trump wasn't involved. I don't know if any of the victims have said that Trump was not involved. I know that a number of the victims have claimed the opposite of that, and I know that there is a ton of evidence linking, the fellow with the island and the plane to our current president. So. I would need to look more into that. Alrighty, Jay says, I'm fiscally conservative but socially liberal. Well, are you aware that the economy crashes more often in Republican administrations and the economy does better in Democratic administrations, Jay? The Winterman says, which will lead to recession. I mean, did you have a first sentence there, Winterman? Or was your sentence just which will lead to recession? I think we're very likely going to see a recession. Alrighty, Shaw the Pooper again. Again, I didn't say it was a conspiracy theory. I said you have to be careful with information around Israel because there are a lot of conspiracy theories around it. So calm down. Curtis Yarvin says if the dollar falls, we can't keep running our deficit. I believe that that's accurate, Curtis. Just another reason why we are in dangerous and unprecedented times. Shah says, do you agree that the fellow with the island worked for the Mossad? There's no evidence that he worked for them or with them or was them, but it is likely that because of the compromising information that he had on powerful people, that he was an operative for a lot of different intelligence agencies. I find that the focus on Israel and Mossad specifically to be a little like dog whistly anti-Semitic coded. Shah, I'm not calling you out for anything specific. I'm just saying that, there are other intelligence agencies out there. There are other, there are other adversarial nations. There are other places doing G-sides and war crimes, All right. Giordan says, why do people love that piece of shit Trump? Misinformation and propaganda, my guy. Curtis Yarvin says, don't equate Republicans and right wing and vice versa. I mean, in America, they're pretty well similar. Curtis. Jason Beard says, does Putin hate Israel? I actually don't know what Putin's opinion is of Israel. Shah the Pooper says, well, he had an Israeli passport, brother. Okay. Shah, I gotta be honest, I'm getting kind of annoyed with your line of questioning here and with your spamming of the comments. So ask a question or dip. The Winterman says, stop spending and small businesses will fail. That is also accurate, but it is not up to the American people to sustain small businesses. American people are just trying to fucking survive. The government needs to be doing more to protect small businesses, but all the Republican government is doing right now is protecting the billionaire class and massive corporations. Let's see here. It bothered you because you're all right. Congratulations, Shaw. You're out of here. I don't care for that kind of nonsense on my live stream. Alrighty. Let's see here. Scrolling down to the bottom. Elijah Henry says, do you affiliate with a political party? Yes, the Democratic Party. Jason Beer says, what in Ukraine is worth America's interest? The interest is in protecting the agreement of every other nation on the globe of saying that nations are allowed to protect their borders and more powerful nations are not allowed to just take over, weaker nations. And in addition, the Russian government has been adversarial to America for a while now. Putin has been adversarial to America for a while now. And so anything that we can do to weaken him and his administration is going to be a boon to America, because it just means that he will have fewer resources to attack us. And so, yeah, the Russian economy is struggling. The Russian people are struggling. The Russian military is operating on fumes. It's this is the investment in stopping Russia at Ukraine, as opposed to letting them get Ukraine and then continue into Europe and potentially NATO countries, is incalculable. Let's see here. Jason Beard says, what about the soccer ball? What do you mean the soccer ball? Lindsay says, hey, rent or buy a home, which is better for Gen Z right now? Oh, I am 100% not qualified to make that decision. But also, who in Gen Z do you know who can afford a house right now? Good Lord. Jersey Rican says, do you think that Trump will bail out Arkansas since they are losing their farms? They are on their knees. So Jersey Rican, the Trump administration in the first term showed that they were not above just bribing people to stop their whining about how the Trump administration was hurting them. And, that's just like more of the money printing that fiscal conservatives claim to dislike. But yeah, I wouldn't put it past Trump to do either thing. And both of them are bad, it's bad to continue his stupid ass tariff policies that are starving farmers in Arkansas, but it's also bad to continue the tariff policy and just print a bunch of money to tide over those Arkansas farmers. Like, it's not a sustainable policy. But either one of them will be bad for America, so I don't really see him doing I don't really have I can imagine him doing both. All right. Broad AX3 says, is there any substance in the argument of the Tangerine Tyrant being a Russian asset? There's definitely substance to it. I don't know if there's any, definitive evidence. What I always go back to is, if he was, would he be doing anything different than he is right now? And the answer pretty definitively is no. He's already acting like he is one. Right. No Screen Name says, do you think ICE should be abolished? 100%. They are a rogue agency acting illegally. They are redundant. We don't need them. They are bad. Right. Soft Metal says, how much is BlackRock responsible for the current political landscape? I mean, the same as any extremely powerful and well-funded right-wing organization. Absolutely. Curtis Yarvin says, less farms, more high-density housing. Are you saying that will be a consequence, or are you saying is that your policy? Jersey Rican says, do you think the 34 count convicted felon finishes term or indefinitely stay in office? He's going to try to stay in office until he dies. Whether or not he is successful depends entirely on people like you and me doing the work, Jersey Rican. Gino FFE says, no, they shouldn't be abolished. What shouldn't be abolished? Oh, ICE. No, they should, Gino. 100% they should. Let's see here. Mike says, Trump is the great president in American history. That's not spelled correctly, and also that is not a question, so you're out of here. Let's see here. So XMG and Gino are both saying that ICE should not be abolished. But those aren't questions, guys. So if you guys would like to ask a question, you can stick around. But if you're just going to keep on saying no, then I eventually will block you. Kate says, did you see the former Israeli Prime Minister's emails to Epstein about Palantir and Peter Thiel? I did not see those. Got to be honest, it sounds a little sus to me, but I'll give it a Google, Swingdinger says, the best one ever. Do you mean Donald Trump? Because if that is what you mean, then you're wrong. Voodoo Child says, do you think RFK will be fired? I don't know, but he should be, 100%. Bot says, why vote for someone else's personal success? Do you mean why vote Republican? Because it will only help billionaires? Is that what you're saying, Bot? I'm not really sure what the name, what you are, insinuating there. XMG says, do you think ICE should stop doing drug raids? I think ICE should stop doing everything that it's doing. They're operating illegally, unconstitutionally, barbarically. They're not helping the country. They're just doing terrible things. Gino says, look how ICE saved those kids in the Hyundai plant. Oh, Gino, you're getting your news from bad sources. There's no child labor at the Hyundai plant. It was just a bunch of Korean people, adults. And now we have a worse relationship with one of our allies because of that raid. It is unreal that you just said that. Jersey Rican says, "What are your thoughts on the primary? Can win the House with all this redistricting?" So the polling suggests that Democrats have a very good chance of taking back the House in the midterms. But polls are not predictive. They are just a snapshot in history. So Jersey Rican, I say, if you want the Democrats to win the House and the Senate, then let's do the work of making them win the House and the Senate. Kung Dan says, "Why is every president a Zionist? Not every president is a Zionist." Gabriel Rollins says, "Do you think Citizens United will ever be overturned?" Gabriel, if you and me do the work of electing politicians that want to overturn Citizens United, then Citizens United will get overturned. But it's not going to happen magically. Gino FFE says, "I'm getting that from a liberal source." I doubt it, Gino. I doubt it. Yeah, there's no child labor at that Hyundai plant. Gino, that's what you're saying here, right? Elias says, "Do you like multiculturalism?" Yes, I do. Let's see here. Jersey Rican says, "Is America becoming isolationist? Are we more in danger?" We are more in danger. We are becoming more isolationist. And it's entirely the fault of the Republican Party and Donald Trump. No name says, "Why does Trump care about flag burning? Isn't he a supporter of the First Amendment?" So he does not actually give a shit about the First Amendment. His interpretation of the First Amendment is, I should be able to say the things that I want. The people that like me should be able to say the things that they want, and everybody else should shut the fuck up. So he doesn't give a shit about First Amendment violations where it is throwing people in jail or revoking their citizenship because they said that Donald Trump is a piece of shit. Throwing me in jail for saying Donald Trump is a piece of shit is something that Donald Trump will have zero problem with whatsoever. So yeah, he does not give a shit about the First Amendment. As far as like, why does he care about flag burning? It's an identity politics issue, and that is how he and the Republican Party maintain popularity. Is they say, we are this, and if you want to be this with us, then vote for us and don't ask questions and fly our flags and tell everybody how great we are and shit like that. They want people fighting about flag burning and shit like that so that we don't, see the fucking concentration camps that they're building and everybody's electricity costs going up and our healthcare costs going up and food becoming more expensive and all the wars that Trump said he was going to stop not stopping and even starting a new war with Venezuela for some fucking reason, shit like that. Right, Mr. Swift Crashmore says, "This is graceful to burn a flag." I have no opinion on whether or not it is a good thing or a bad thing, but it is a First Amendment issue, so if you want to, I say you should be able to. Bot says, "Do you see Trump running in 28? I don't know what he's going to do. He's going to try to stay in office, whether that means running for another term or, declaring martial law to cancel elections. I don't know what he's going to do, but he will help, He will try. Dan says, "Voting will never change the system. They will never let someone non-corrupt win." Dan, that is wildly inaccurate. Voting is the way that we change the system. It is one of the ways that we change the system, but it is the most important way that we change the system, Dan. Right. No shame in my game says he's not making it to 2028 from your lips to God's ears. Matt Uno T says, "How do you retire a flag?" I don't know. I think you gotta send it somewhere and then they give it a proper burial or some shit like that. Good Guy 53 says, "Who wasn't corrupt in your opinion?" I mean, there's tons of politicians who aren't corrupt, Let's see here. AOC, Maxwell Frost, Jasmine Crockett, Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, Brian Schatz, J.B. Pritzker, Tim Walz, Chris Murphy. There's tons. Bernie Sanders, Jason Job says, "Burning a flag is a physical act, not speech." That is not what the Supreme Court says. Right. Stan says, "We're being lied to. There are people at the top we don't see. There are no Dems or Republicans." That is also wildly inaccurate, Dan. There are vastly different outcomes depending on who is in charge of the government, either at the federal level or the state level. The blue states operate differently than red states, and the government itself operates differently under Democrats than it does under Republicans. And the benefits for the citizens of America, we all do a lot better under Democratic administrations than Republican administrations. So, yeah. Let's see here. Bot, don't spread stupid Rothschild's conspiracy theories in my live. Gino FFE says, "They're two winds of the same bird. Don't be ignorant." Congratulations, Gino. You have annoyed me to the point where you are out of here. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Mason says, "Why are Democratic cities ran so poorly then?" Most Democratic cities are run excellently, Mason. I'm not really sure where you're getting that from. Because all of the cities that have the worst quality of life are in red states. So I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Let's see here. K543 says opinion on Department of War. I mean, it's stupid because it's just like renaming an agency. So what is the fucking value of that? We're spending how much money to change all the signs and shit like that? Why is this a big deal? It's just all more, identity politics bullshit of we're a war, we like tough things and guns and military and punches and kicks and shit like that. But also, it is kind of like it is suggesting that the American military is going to be more hawkish going forward, and they're not going to be shy about blowing up random boats in the water and then saying, "Oh, we had to do that because those were drug dealers." Like, what the fuck, man? Unfucking believable. Other verses, thoughts on reparations. I don't have a problem with reparations. I think a lot of Americans do, though, and so I think that for the in order to accomplish the goal of reparations, it might be smart to not do reparations and do other things to try to infuse investment into, black communities, support black, entrepreneurs and small businesses and things like that. All right, Mr. Swift Crashmore says not concentration camps of the military stay in the same tent. Mr. Swift Crashmore, that is not the thing that makes something a concentration camp or not. And if you ask anybody who is a scholar of concentration camps, they will tell you that what the Trump administration is doing is building concentration camps. Lisa Salas says, what's happening in Virginia? Why so many children are missing and it's not being addressed? I actually don't know about that story, Lisa. I'm so sorry. Rebecca Brooks says Trump focuses on a lot of unimportant things rather than real progress. That is accurate. Well, what he's doing is he's distracting you from all the damage that he's doing. Bot says, what's your opinion on tax cuts for the rich? I'm against them. I am fully against them. We need to do the opposite. We need to tax the rich more and cut taxes for the people in poverty and the middle class. Ali Bay says it's only a secondary name, but is being enforced. Mr. Swift Crashmore says, oh, the education makes you intelligent excuse. The education makes you intelligent excuse. What the fuck is that in reference to? What the hell is that in reference to? Concentration camps. I mean, oh yeah, education makes you intelligent excuse. Yeah. No, you can definitely be stupid if you can get your doctorate and be stupid. You can not have your high school degree and be a genius. But the fact of the matter is that everybody who studies the Holocaust will tell you that what Trump is doing is building concentration camps. So you can miss me with that nonsense, Mr. Swift Crashmore. You're on my list. If the next thing that you put in the chat is not a question, then you're out of here. Other verses, can J.D. Vance be president and Trump be VP? I do not believe that they can just switch places like that. Jojo says, do you think the Democrats will actually run Gavin Newsom in 28? So first of all, the Democrats aren't going to run anybody. We're going to vote for who we want to be the nominee. And whoever wins the primary will be the nominee. I know that there's this idea out there that the DNC just picks and chooses. They're like these Machiavellian geniuses that, they pick the candidates every single time, but that's just not the case whatsoever. Let's see here. And Jojo also asks, and what would be the damage if they did? I don't think there'd be any damage if Gavin Newsom was the candidate. He'd be a totally fine candidate. A lot of people are hype about Gavin Newsom being the candidate. Alrighty. Let's see here. Let's see here. Fly south, live in the zone. Jersey Rican says, is there legality building prisons for cheap labor? There are issues with it legally, and the Trump administration is constantly losing in the lower courts, but I don't really have any faith that the Supreme Court is going to uphold the law where the Trump administration is concerned. Wave Master says, is it true that the big ugly bill passed people making under 90K will have increased taxes? That is accurate. Let's see here. Scrolling down. Ham Bone Mike says, the rich already paid most of the taxes. Well, they're still not paying enough because there are people who are flying around on private jets, eating caviar and cocaine 3 meals a day, while there are record numbers of people who have to live on the street because they can't afford food or rent or medical care. So tax them more. I don't give a shit that they already pay the most. Tax them more. Land Sea Air says, I'm so glad Dems will remain powerless for decades. What a weird prediction that you could not even fucking possibly know. Also, that's not a question, so you're out of here. Scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Darian says, they should just work harder. What, the poor? They already work way harder than you and I, so I don't really know what you're referring to. All right, X-Swole Bollock says, is Trump trying to start a civil war? Yes, he is. Badger75 says, percent of income rich pay less. Yes, that is accurate. Piddle Patty Potty says, call the FBI. For why? Shork says, do you think the Democrat dark money thing matters? I think it matters in so much as people now have an idea that there are the exact same dark money problems on the left as there are the right. And that idea is false, and it will hurt the Democratic Party. It will not hurt the Republican Party. And that's the reason why that woman wrote that article. I forget what her name is. But yeah, she's a troll. She is trying to take down the Democratic Party. Bot says, what do you think AI could do in politics? I mean, right now, AI is such a flawed technology in addition to being massively wasteful. I think there's probably some use cases out there. I'm not really the expert in it, but yeah, I just think that we need more responsible people in the government, who are not as easily corruptible and have a fucking cryptocurrency so that, fucking tech billionaires can bribe them to do whatever they want with AI. Like, yeah, it's fucking terrifying, man. Jason Job says a lot of poverty was living on the Democratic government. Jason Job, I do not believe that is accurate. Lisa Salas says, do you think the military will turn on Trump? So right now, the Trump administration, in his second term, he's been really good at replacing the top military brass with loyalists. So there's still a lot of career people in the military, but I don't know like what the pace is for purging those people that would stand up to Trump that are currently still in the military. So it's an open question, like the military knows that they will not be spared of consequences if they do illegal things under the guise of following orders. But it's that takes a lot of strength and bravery, and I hope that they have it. Right, not showing my pretty faces. Can the next Democratic administration uncorrupt the Supreme Court? Is that possible in our lifetime? Absolutely not showing my pretty face, but it becomes harder the less political power that they have. So if they get the House, but they don't have like a wide majority, there are weak links in the Democratic coalition that could be corruptible that would then not vote for the kind of, changes, the kind of legislation that would uncorrupt the Supreme Court. We would need to get 60 votes in the Senate, I believe, in order to expand the courts, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure no, we just need 50 seats to expand the courts. So you wouldn't have to change any laws. You would just have to have 50 senators who would vote for another nominee, even if one does not retire or pass away. And again, that becomes really difficult if we only have 50 seats like on the button, because then we could get another Cinema, we could get another Manchin, who are, obviously extremely corruptible. Right, let's see here. Wavemaster says, Mr. Nice says, Democrats have controlled the government and media overwhelmingly in the last 50 years. It's our turn. Mr. Nice, that is a wildly inaccurate thing that you just said. Do you know that that's inaccurate and you're just saying it to start fights? Or do you really think that that's the case? Because if you really think that's the case, I'd be happy to disabuse you of that idea. Drizzy Rican says, do you think we are heading for the shutdown? I think it's probably more likely than not that we're going to do a shutdown, because the Democrats got yelled at for acquiescing to keeping the government open the last time there was a funding fight. I still don't know if it's a better idea to compromise or let Trump shut down the government, because both of them would just be giving more power to the Trump administration. And so, yeah, it's a difficult call. I don't think that there's a good decision to be made there. It is just arguing about which is the less worse decision. And so I don't know. I'm scared. I'm always scared about what the Trump administration is going to do. And I don't believe that the Democrats have the power to stop it on their own. So when this fight happens and whatever happens out of it, everybody's going to start yelling and screaming about how the Democrats are weak. They're not doing anything to fight this. And it's like they don't have enough political power to fight this. They're doing everything they can with the mechanisms that they have, but that's not going to stop people from yelling at them, because people love yelling at the Democrats for no fucking reason, All right, Shork says, what happens with the economy if official numbers aren't known to be true? I believe the main factor there is going to be crashing the dollar and the American bond market, because, other countries are not going to want to invest in American debt if they are not sure if the information that's coming out about America is accurate. I think it'll probably also hinder the economy, because businesses need that information to be accurate so that they can inform their hiring decisions and their expansion and, ordering inventory going forward. So I think it's probably going to be another straw on the back of the camel that is, hurtling us towards a recession. Half-Blood Nation says, why do we even have debt? Because they say so. We have debt because the Republican Party has had a fucking hard-on for cutting taxes for the billionaire class for the last 50 years. And so we've been running a deficit basically exclusively because of that. Since the Reagan administration. Since the Bush administration, because a Democratic administration, the Clinton administration, solved the deficit. We had a budget surplus for the first time in however fucking many years. And then George W. Bush got elected and fucking pissed it all away. Half-Blood Nation says, but who do we owe? Like, how does this work? We owe the money to ourselves, but we also owe the money to other countries that have invested in American bonds. More specifically than that, I don't really feel confident talking about. I could theorize and kind of shoot from the hip, but I'm not really 100%. Other verses, how is redistricting even legal? So redistricting is actually a valuable process by which we adjust for population changes that happen every 10 years. What you're referring to is gerrymandering, other verse. Gerrymandering is where the districts are drawn in a way to give one party an electoral advantage. And, it has been done a lot in the past, but with the election of Barack Obama in 2008 and the Republican Party losing their fucking mind, that is when things became supercharged and the billionaire class was like, all right, we have to do everything we can to start cementing our rule. And so they started gerrymandering in ways that were like, what do you call it? Really egregious and obvious. And the Democratic Party tried to make gerrymandering illegal during the Biden administration, and the Republican Party filibustered it. So, we get rid of gerrymandering in one election cycle if we elect enough Democrats. If we got a veto-proof majority in the Senate, which I believe is 60 votes, but it could be 67, I can't remember. And if we got back the House, then we could pass a bill to make partisan gerrymandering illegal. And we wouldn't even have to worry about Trump signing it if we had a veto-proof majority. 67. Thank you, Rose of the Goat. Alrighty, let's see here. Half-Blood Nation says, let's freedom this shit up and start fresh. Let's declare bankruptcy and restart in a few years. I don't know how good of an idea that is, Half-Blood Nation. Alrighty. Jason Job says, did you do more without during Trump's first terms or Biden? Did you do more without? What do you mean? What does that question mean, Jason? Christian Volumists, burgers. Stop spamming. All right. CS1 says they have to use the tools they have. Making it go into shutdown is one of those tools. CS, but you understand how that would be also a power grab for the Trump administration, right? Like you see how we're kind of like between a rock and a hard place here, right? CS. All right. Literally, Catwoman says, how can I check where to vote in local elections and midterms? I voted in the presidential. So your Secretary of State's website, literally Catwoman, should have all that information for you. So what I would do is I would just say, put in your city and your state into a Google search with where to vote, register to vote, things like that. And then it'll be able to give you your polling location and everything. Other verses, are we in the final season of America? We are. If good people like you and me don't do the work of stopping the Trump administration, we are. But if we just sit on our hands and hope and pray for someone to come save us, then we are. We are swiftly heading towards the season finale. All right. CS says, sorry, I'm not following on how it would be a power grab for the Trump administration. Can you explain? Absolutely. So when the government shuts down, the president gets to decide who stays on, who still gets paid, what still stays open. And that is essentially what the Trump administration has been trying to do illegally through things like Doge and firing of department heads and things like that, things that should be, worked on with Congress, shutting down agencies and stuff like that. When the government is shut down, every agency that the Trump administration has been trying to shut down can be shut down just like that. Regulatory agencies, oversight, anything that helps people will be shut down. And any staff that the Trump administration views as unnecessary will be told to go home. I'm sure I'm missing some other mechanisms here because I remember people have talked about this in the past. But yeah, he will have more control over what the government does than he currently does if the government shuts down. Alrighty, Pentagon 6360 says, might have missed it, but what's the best play for Dems for the shutdown? Pentagon, I don't know. You know, we're damned if you do and damned if you don't. They do not have the power to actually negotiate a spending bill that would not be terrible, but a shutdown would also be terrible for America. So I don't know. I don't know. And there are going to be people out there who will tell you that the decision is obvious and that Democrats should 100% do this or 100% do that. And anybody who doesn't do what they say is either a left-wing radical who wants to destroy everything or a corporate sellout who is just doing what the big oil and coal or Israel is telling them to do. And that is complete and utter bullshit because it is a hard choice. Nobody is certain which is the thing that will mitigate the least amount of damage, mitigate the most amount of damage. Kamoner says, why do you let politics control you? I do not let politics control me, but politics is very influential in all of our lives. Lisa Salas says, now that Trump has immunity, is there any way to remove him? Oh, absolutely. With the immunity ruling only has to do with legal consequences for the things that he does while president after he leaves office. So if he murders somebody and he is able to say to the Supreme Court, that was an official act that I murdered that guy as president of the United States, then the Supreme Court says, if they agree that it was an official act, that he cannot be held legally accountable for that murder. All right. Thank you, Rena. You did an awesome job with that block just then. South Fork Greg says, do you think Trump will actually send the National Guard to Chicago, or is it a scare tactic? I believe that he is going to do that. I don't know if J.B. Pritzker has any way of stopping it or, utilizing the police in Chicago to, try to slow them down or something like that. The legality of it is, I think, currently being decided. I think the lower court just found that what he did in California was illegal. So, you could assume that they would also find that, going to Chicago would be illegal. But yeah, I don't know what that's going to look like. I would just say, if it happens, it will most likely be just like what happened in LA and DC, which is people weren't getting into fights or starting riots or anything like that. It was just people were scared to go out. People were scared to go to restaurants, and small businesses, local businesses will suffer because people don't want to go out when there's a bunch of fucking military people with AR-15s aimed at their faces and shit like that. Cheese Lord says, do you think the two-party system just causes hate? No, because the division that we're feeling right now is specifically engineered by the Republican Party and the billionaire class. We have had parties in the past, and you could make an argument that we were not so harshly and concretely divided as we are now. And so what is different about then than now? The difference is things like Citizens United, things like the Koch brothers, things like repealing the Fairness Doctrine, all the things that billionaires in the Republican Party have done to get us to where we are today. E says, only division is the Democrats. That's not a question, E, so congratulations. You're out of here. Okay, scrolling down to the bottom. Bingham Abbott says, do you think it's possible that the fellow with the island files are being used to blackmail politicians? It's possible. Shork says, being too amicable to Democrats' right now, keep them too centrist instead of course correction. I don't believe that is the case, Shork. The reason why centrist Democrats stay centrist is because they continue winning elections being centrists. If every centrist Democrat lost their primary or lost their general, then they would not be centrists anymore. I do not believe that by being harsher to the Democratic Party, we are incentivizing them to be more progressive. Because when they lose elections, they look at the party that won, the Conservative Party, the Republican Party, and they go, oh, I guess the reason why we lost is because we weren't enough like those guys. Foraging Pro Gamer says, is it true that Trump is telling the truth, but the politicians escalate to make him look bad? No, Trump is not telling the truth. He is one of the most consistent, pathological liars. He tells massive lies all the time. He'll tell the truth, and then he'll lie about the truth that he just told, and vice versa. He is a liar. He is always lying. The easiest thing that you can do in your life is assume that anything that you hear from Donald Trump is bullshit. Pentagon 6360 says favorite Dems 2028 nominee. I don't really wish cast for 28. I'm trying to get everybody focused on 26, the midterms in 26. I will not stop shutting up about the midterms in 26. Not showing my pretty face says, but why can't Dems see what we can see, that more progressive is a better strategy, not more centrist? So not showing my pretty face, that's an open argument. There are plenty of people out there who believe that Democrats lose because they're too left-wing as opposed to being too centrist. And the data is all over the map, depending on what state, what district you're in, who you're talking to. It really does matter, to be specific about this. Being more progressive does not automatically mean election wins. And we've seen this pretty consistently over the past 8 years. There are places where progressive Democrats crush, there are places where progressive Democrats get demolished, and the same is true for centrist Democrats as well. Now, I personally believe in the progressive message. I believe that that is a winning message. So if I was in control of the Democratic Party, I would be leaning into our younger, more progressive candidates. But there is a rational and data-driven argument for why it should be more of a case-by-case situation. Not to mention the fact that the Democratic Party is a big tent, and that we should have people with diverse political opinions. If we got rid of every Republican, the government would still not be a one-party state, because the Democratic Party is a rainbow coalition of every different kind of American. And that's the way it should be. That's the way the American government should be. Alrighty, Forging Pro Gamer says, with all the rallies, it's hard to believe he won fairly. I mean, there was cheating that happened, but it wasn't. We don't have any info that there were actually vote totals that were changed. The Rockland County case in New York could potentially change that, depending on what information comes out of there. But at the moment, we have no evidence that votes were changed. But they did do massive campaign finance violations. They did close down polling locations in Democratic areas. They have voter ID laws in certain states, which is voter suppression tactics. So yeah, they cheat, they lie, and they cheat to win elections. Yeah, let's see here. Scott Clyra says it will be difficult to poll farmers in red states with progressive candidates. Yeah, potentially. Or, people like Bernie Sanders going down there and, doing the work of convincing could maybe change some minds there, South Fork Greg says, do you think Trump genuinely won all 7 swing states, or was there funny business going on? I have not seen any substantive data to suggest that there were anomalies in Trump winning those states. Some statistical correlations, like the fact that Trump did better in blue states than he had previously, and that the advantage that he had in swing states was actually smaller than the gains he made in blue states. So it looks like what Harris was doing in those swing states was working, but that, the trend of Republicans doing better in nationwide elections was just kind of that was just, it was endemic. The Rockland County case is different, though. The Rockland County case is interesting. It does make it seem potentially like there was some hacking and vote deleting going on, but I do not believe that it is productive to assume that case is going to prove that. Because even if it does prove that, we're still fucked. The answer to the situation is the election is not getting overturned based on that information. We still have to do the work of removing every Republican from office through voting. Right. Casey Crypto says, will Powell cut rates? I mean, he suggested he's gonna lower them a little bit, but not by a lot, to try to curb some of the stagnation in the market. Right now, we are having stagflation, and that's the worst of both worlds. So I think that he's trying to make a calculus of it would be better to have more inflation with a hot economy than less inflation with a dead economy. But I don't know. That's a guess on my part. Short says, why are establishment Democrats refusing to endorse Mamdani? So I think that there's a couple of reasons for that. I think that there are some good faith objections to Mamdani within the Democratic Party, where they think, his policies are not going to be good for Democrats running in red states. This is going to be weaponized against us. We're never going to hear the end of this in Fox News. Fox News already has AOC and Jasmine Crockett to use, and Bernie Sanders to use, to prove that we are left-wing extremists who are going to destroy the country and turn us into Russia. So we have to not we have to not endorse full-throatedly, because that will just be more fuel for the right-wing propaganda machine. But I do think there's other shittier Democrats who do not like progressives and who are fighting against all progressives because it challenges their power. I think there are probably some Democrats who are being overly influenced by AIPAC campaign donations or the threat of AIPAC funding a primary challenger. I think there's a bunch of reasons I don't think that it's cut and dry, but I do think that it's important to recognize that Mamdani and candidates like him are the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is not just the people who are saying that they won't endorse him. The Democratic Party is not just people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. It is also people like it's also the good Democrats, of which vastly outweigh. There are more good Democrats than there are bad Democrats in the party, is what I'm saying. Max says, do you believe there should be shorter terms? I don't. People already don't vote enough. I think getting everybody to vote like once a year is probably too much to ask. But I could be wrong about that. I'm a voting nerd, so I'm like, yeah, let's fucking vote more, man. I'm about it. Malcolm Vincent says, what are your thoughts on price floors, ceilings? So it's a tricky thing. Nixon did price controls, and it didn't work out great back then. But I do think that there are ways to sort of like root out some of the causes of inflation and try to attack that. Because there's a difference between like natural inflation and greedflation, where companies are just raising prices because they're getting away with it. You know what I mean? Like they're hiding, inflating their profits under the umbrella of, oh, this is just inflation happening. So there could potentially be regulation to address that. But also, we need to do more to curb inflation. And the best things that we can do for that are to stop putting stupid fucking tariffs on everything, fund the lower classes so that there's more purchasing power in the 99%. And investing more in America as opposed to just giving that money to billionaires, Brian Daniel says, do you believe NGOs need more transparency on money allocation? I don't know. I don't know what the current laws are on NGO money allocation. I'm not sure who's weaponizing, hiding their money, NGOs hiding their money. But I think probably the bigger issue is, I don't know if you count super PACs as NGOs, But shit like that. Rini says, thoughts on age limits in Congress, President, Supreme Court? I'm for it. Let's see here. East meets Westy Bestie says, no statistical support that he could have won all 7 swing states, dude. How can you deny that? East meets Westy Bestie. There are some people who have crunched the numbers who have said that it is a statistical anomaly that people would vote for a Democratic senator but then not vote for a Democratic president. But as far as like the data of the federal elections, the soft audits that have happened in the swing states, the gains that the Republican Party made in every election district in America, like it all kind of makes sense. I'm not going to fight you, East meets Westy Bestie. You've been here before. You know that I'm chill like that. If you want more information on that, on the data scientists who say it makes sense as opposed to the data scientists who say it doesn't make sense, send me a DM, because I have a great podcast episode that I could forward to you with just that information. Poke Pete says, Kamala is just that bad, I guess, LOL. No, she only had 100 days to mount her campaign. So no, I don't think that Kamala was bad. I think she was great. And I think she would have been a great president. Gabriel says, the only people laundering money through NGOs are the CIA. Maybe. I don't know about that. Malcolm Vinson says, do you think after Trump is gone, we will get another cult leader-like figure, or the GOP will recover? I think that what's going to happen is we're going to see a bunch of people within the Republican Party try to fight for the crown. They're going to try to be the one who inherits the MAGA base. I think the most likely scenario is that one of the Trump kids gets it because they have the last name Trump. But it's possible that we just move on to a different, fake populist like Josh Hawley or, Tucker Carlson or some shit like that. Flamingo Mo, good to see you again. Says, what do you think about Mike Johnson's living arrangements? I don't know anything about Mike Johnson's living arrangements. Gabriel says Marco Rubio will be VP for Trump Jr. Yeah, probably. I mean, he's sold his soul. He should get something in exchange, you know. East meets Westy Besties to follow the election alliance and spoon of more stats and Jackie's data. Yeah, I think all of that stuff is very interesting, but very much not definitive. And if you're just looking at things that are correlative as opposed to causal, you can find just as much statistical data that says that this all tracks, you know. But again, I'm not claiming that there was not election rigging. I'm just saying that right now we have no definitive evidence that there is, and that it is not impossible to argue against the things that Election Alliance are saying. Let's see here. Gabriel says Trump is also wildly more popular than your average GOP senator. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, probably. Ace says, "What do you think of that government guy on the date saying that we are taking names out?" I think he was. I think he was telling the truth. I think that he sincerely got fucking honey trapped into admitting that the FBI, under the governance of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who are Trump lackeys who will do whatever Trump tells them to do, that they are redacting Republican names and highlighting or inserting Democratic names. Good guy 53 says there's no proof of election fraud. We can make some up. If there's no proof of election fraud, we can make some up. I don't know if you're doing that as a joke, good guy, or what, but I'm going to take it as you being a silly Billy. East meets Westy Bessie says, how would you explain 7 out of 7 states probability? Misinformation and propaganda. You know, the states tend to trend in the same way because the states are made up of the exact same kinds of people. You know, the demographics are not that different in swing states. It's the reason why they're swing states. So yeah, you know, it makes sense. It makes sense that every incumbent around the globe, whether they were a left-leaning government or right-leaning government, they all suffered electoral defeats or, you know, pain, I guess. They all did less better. My language is failing me. At an hour in, my language tends to start to fail me. East meets Westy. There was an incumbency bias where everybody that was in power did worse electorally than they did in previous elections. And so it makes sense. It makes sense. Right. Ace says, and when the list does come out, if it does, how are we going to know it's the real untouched list? We're not going to know. We're not going to know because the Department of Justice has been taken over by Trump loyalists who do not give a shit about the rule of law. They only give a shit about doing what Daddy Trump tells them to do. Short says, did you see that even the NRA is against Trump's discussed ban on arms to trans people? Yeah, well, the NRA is just trying to sell guns. You know, they don't give a fucking shit. You know, they're trying to lower the age that you can buy a gun. They want to be able to buy guns for fetuses, you know? And yeah. Insert any Democratic proposal that equals more guns, the NRA would be for, you know? If we discovered that guns cured climate change, then the NRA would be saying, oh my God, climate change is real and we gotta do something about it, you know? Let's see here. The artist formerly known as Prince asked me, do you support AIPAC? No, I do not. They are an extreme right-wing organization. They and other big money groups are toxic to our politics. Just a person says opinion on the Gaza war. Ooh, that's a small one. I'll give you the cliff notes. Hamas has done war crimes. The Israeli government under Netanyahu has also done war crimes. Many independent agencies, including those located within Israel, are saying that this is a G-side. It should not be up for debate anymore, that it is a G-side. The reason why there is this tension is that the Israeli government has been a very bad actor in that region. They have been, the people of Palestine have been suffering under an apartheid-like state, and they're constantly having their territory annexed by the Israeli government. So I believe that if we're going to have peace in that area, then the Israeli government is going to have to start doing a lot more work of being good neighbors and taking care of the people of Palestine as opposed to, being prejudiced against them. Hav says, who you voted for? Democrats up and down the ballots. Prince says, AIPAC owns the left and the right. It's the biggest problem we have right now. So it's not equal, though. AIPAC influences every politician with campaign donations or by funding primary challengers. But there are more Democrats standing up to AIPAC than there are Republicans standing up to AIPAC. So again, better is better and worse is worse. And so, and when you say both sides arguments like that, like AIPAC owns the left and the right without diving into the specifics and the scale of it, then you are doing the work of helping the Republican Party and helping AIPAC by making it seem like it's all the same. There's no difference. Why even vote? Why even get involved? All right. Kitsy says that's pretty funny. AIPAC needs to AIPAC it up. Pokey Pete says, "Are you able to highlight any bipartisan things that Trump has done correctly this term?" I think if I thought about it, I could, but I also don't really understand the value of it. Like, people will ask me this question all the time, like, can you say something nice about Trump? Can you say something that he did that was correct? I don't know why that's productive. Like, are you trying to prove that I am an objective and unbiased person? To me, it sounds like you want me to say something nice about the dude who is stabbing me in the throat. Like, do I have to admit that they have nice eyes? Like, is that really valid? Or am I just biased against people that stab me in the throat? Shit like that. All right. Ace says, thoughts on the failed military mission in North Korea in 2019. It is further evidence of a Trump administration that is lacking in the necessary oversight. They are not letting the American people and the relevant agencies know when they do things. They are acting unilaterally, the way that dictators do, the way that fascist regimes do, and that is bad for the world. It is bad for democracy. It is bad for global peace. It is bad for America. It's just bad. It's bad. Probably illegal. Prince says, all I know is the only thing that Republicans and Democrats agree on is funding for Israel. Yes, but fewer Democrats agree to it than Republicans. There were a record number of Democrats who voted against funding Israel this year, Prince. And so I think we need to recognize that the Democratic Party is better on this issue than the Republican Party and vote for better over worse going forwards. Ace says Trump's plan with the list is to make it so even when it comes out, even if 100% you can't tell that it is the real one. That is 100% his plan. Absolutely. Alrighty. Let's see here, everybody. We're at about an hour. Carmine says, thoughts on the tent. The tent. What are you referring to, Carmine? So, everybody, we're at about an hour. Get in your final questions. But while I am waiting for those final questions, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for watching and for all the comments and the questions and the likes and the shares and the gifts. I appreciate any support that you want to give to me and to this channel. All of it is very important. MT Clash says, do you see the possibility of a civil war? And if so, what do you think it would look like? I do not believe that there's going to be a civil war, MT Clash. I think it's a possibility that we see more of a militarized country where it looks a little bit more like modern day Russia or Germany in the 1930s. But I don't believe we see like a civil war type situation. Pokey Pete says, I think politicians are way too focused on candidates instead of issues. Like hearing both sides. I'm not 100% what you mean by that, Pokey Pete, because I know that the Democratic Party and the Democratic candidates often talk about the issues, in addition to talking about candidate quality. There is what's up, Collie? Good to see you. There's like a growing misinformation trend of saying the reason why Democrats lose, or the reason why I won't support the Democratic Party is because they don't do X. And then me, being a guy who pays very close attention to politics, I'm like, but they did do that thing that you said that you wanted them to do, like our friend here, with the Prince emoji as the screen name, not being aware that the Democratic Party is standing up to AIPAC. Yeah. I forget why I went on this tangent, but yeah. Voodoo Child says Israel picked the fight. Hamas did, right? Not really sure. Can you clean up that question, Voodoo Child? Not really sure what you mean by there. Pokey Pete says, I'm a centrist and feel that Trump got some things right, but he's also crazy, so it's hard to support. I don't think he's got anything right, Pokey Pete. Can you tell me one thing that you think he did accurate? Kaliendra says, what do you talking about? I talk about politics. Can't you see my sign here? Ask me anything about politics? Alrighty. Ace says, what can the governor do to stop Trump from sending National Guards in the states? I don't want him. I'm not 100% sure. ACE. I mean, Newsom did his best, and we literally just won that case. Months after the fact, we won the case that said that what he did was illegal. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what JB Pritzker's got up his sleeve. I hope it's something. Let's see here. Persephone DK says one thing Trump got accurate. He disappeared for a few days. Jay says, you think the main talking points and social issues are distractions from corruptions on both sides? No, I think both sides is a distraction from the fact that the corruption and the issues are happening almost exclusively in the Republican Party, Jay. Because, yeah, like the Democratic Party gets yelled at no matter what they do. They talk about the issues and then they say you're focusing too much on the issues. You need to tell more stories, more personal stories. You need to appeal to people's emotions. You're getting too wonky. And then they do that. And then they say, well, why aren't you talking about the issues? Why aren't you talking about platforms and policies and shit like that? A says, one thing Trump did right was show us how corrupt the government is. I mean, it showed us how corrupt he was. Let's see here. Poke Pete, still waiting for you to tell me what you like. What do you think Trump did right? Sixer says, why is Trump attacking Venezuela? I don't know. I think Venezuela is a useful boogeyman for the Trump administration because they are technically a socialist country, even though they call themselves a socialist country, even though they technically are not a socialist country. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's weirdly escalatory though for a guy who loves, pounding the I'm the peacemaker and I deserve a Nobel Peace Prize and shit like that. Right. Non-consensual alerting says, I think cleaning up DC was something he's done right. Do you mean like, I honestly don't know what you mean by that because he has done no cleaning up of DC as far as I can tell. Non-consensual learning says murder rates weirdly went down. Murder rates were going down before Trump. Non-consensual learning. He actually spiked the murder rates both because of his incompetent COVID response. I'm not sure what's happening with it now, but yeah, I do not believe that sending the military to DC has done anything to stop crime. Insofar as there are just fewer people out on the street because everybody's scared of getting shot by the military, Alrighty. All right. B Max says, I thought no standing armies was like a fairly big deal for these constitutional types. Weird. Yeah, isn't it weird how when Trump does it, it's okay? Let's see here. Flyboy, stop spamming the comments. When you say that Israel is paid for political elections, I think what you mean is that they have contributed to our electoral process of raising funds, not paying for them to happen. Flyboy. I think it's important that we are specific in our language because otherwise we can seem hyperbolic and inaccurate. And I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing that anybody with a ton of money can infuse their money into it. I think that AIPAC is exactly as corrosive and bad for our country as the Koch brothers and the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. Focusing on AIPAC, focusing on Israel feels very anti-Semitic coded to me. Not that there aren't, a ton of very valid criticisms that we can make about the Netanyahu administration. But I do think that it is weird that people seem to fucking only have a problem when AIPAC is donating a ton of money to politicians as opposed to the Heritage Foundation or the Federalist Society or the Koch brothers or Elon Musk or Peter Thiel or fucking insert tech bro billionaire here. You know what I mean? Alrighty. Let's see here. Do I think things will get better? Asks emoji persons. Things will get better, emoji persons, if people like me and you do the work of making it better. And if you want to know what that work is, go to my bio, click on the link, go to my Discord. There is a thread there called The Work. And that is how we fight back. Right. Jay says, what about George Soros? Yeah, he's like one of a few billionaires that helps Democrats. Zuckerberg does not help Democrats. Jay, 75% of all billionaire donations go to the Republican Party, Jay. Right. Justin Landry says, you have to admit they have a very imbalanced amount of influence. AIPAC, that is. I mean, anybody with a lot of money has an imbalanced amount of influence, you know? Jay says, or Bill Gates. Yeah, you can name specific for billionaires all fucking day long, but if you look at the total sum of political donations from billionaires, 75% of it goes to the Republican Party. Jay. Right. Weya says, how much power executive orders have? Executive orders have limited amount of power because sometimes they get challenged in the courts, and depending on if you have a sympathetic or non-sympathetic Supreme Court, your executive orders can get overruled. So it's a very slim definition of what counts as an executive order and what doesn't. And there are constitutional scholars who do this for a living. I am not one of them. But yeah, there are certain things that you cannot do via executive order. Like you cannot remove birthright citizenship via executive order. You cannot take control of federal elections through fiat, through executive order. Alrighty. User a bunch of numbers says if one side spends billions to compete, the other side has to spend billions. That's pretty accurate. User a bunch of numbers. Alrighty. Let's see here. All right, everybody. This has been an excellent live stream. Get in your final questions. Wait, Jay says, is this a Republican versus Democrat problem or an underlying systems problem in our modern world? It's actually both, Jay, because the Democrats have been trying to get money out of politics, but they have never had enough political power to actually make it happen because our electoral systems are weighted in favor of the Republican Party. So it makes it easier for them to win elections, even if their ideas are less popular. So because Democrats have had to keep on working with Republican filibusters and extremely slim majorities in the House and in the Senate, despite having the majority, there's still a very limited amount of things that they can do. So it is a problem of us thinking that we need to fight the other voters, that is an issue. It is an issue of recognizing that the billionaire class are the ones that are hurting us, that are fucking us over, and not Republican voters or Democratic voters or immigrants or trans kids or whatever. But the Republican Party is the party that is making this possible. It is their policies and their judges that are making this cash infusion into our government possible, the influence of billionaires possible. All right, Jay says, I just can't get behind the Democrats. I think both are corrupt, more Dem billionaires than reps. That is inaccurate, Jay. There are more Republican billionaires than Democratic billionaires. And also, the Democratic Party is way better, And I understand that there are people that feel like that. I can't get behind the Democrats. I don't understand it. They're the way better party, so get behind them. What's the deal? If you want to do damage control, if you want to start fixing shit, we all got to start voting for better over worse, all right, Emojis says the problem is that we're also easy to manipulate with hates. That is accurate, We are all plugged into these propaganda machines 24/7. Social media and the billionaire class has captured it to, forward their agenda, Alrighty, everybody. Let's see here. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Check out my Discord. If you have any questions that I was not able to answer on this live stream, or anything comes up when I'm not doing a live stream that you want answers for, please do not hesitate to hit me up. I am available. I have a project. I have a crusade. And that crusade is getting more people to vote, getting more people involved in activism, and unelecting every single fucking Republican. Because they are letting this shit happen. They are letting your costs go up. They are letting the Trump administration remove services that you rely on. They are making your kids less healthy. They are the ones who are allowing the president to fucking accept unlimited amounts of dark money bribes via his fucking cryptocurrency. It is fucking insane. And they need to suffer electoral consequences for being asleep at the wheel and being complicit in this unbelievable fucking fascist, corrupt overthrow of this government. So, yeah, join me in this crusade, guys. Be part of the solution with me. Do the work. Go to the Discord, check out what the work is, and hit me up if you want me to direct you towards good organizations for you to do work with. We need more people in this fight, and we need more. And the people that are doing this fight, we need them to be doing more. So yeah, if you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I have a Patreon. You can join for as little as $1. I have a store that you can buy things from. You can find all those things on my link on my bio. And of course, you can send gifts and subscribe on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and all those good places there. And yeah, just hopefully everybody out there will do the work, you know? Jay says, okay, never mind. Blanket anti-Republicans, Dems do all the same shit you just listed. Fascist diluted word now. That is inaccurate, Jay. It is inaccurate what you just said. And I'll be happy to discuss that in more detail with you. Come back tomorrow because I'm pretty tired right now. But just because you say it is so does not make it as so, Jay. And I have a ton of data. I do this shit 5 days a week, you know? Like, I know of which I speak, you know? Yeah, man, fucking call me on it, man. I can point you to the exact votes. I can point you to the exact bills that I am talking about. Democrats are better than Republicans. And saying so does not make me biased. It means that I'm telling the fucking truth. I got my fucking eyes open. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the gifts and the support and the likes and the shares and everything. It is your support that allows me to keep this show going. So get out there, do the work, join the Discord, get in touch, be good to each other, and be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. I will see y'all tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.